Hey guys, so this is my first post. From a web traffic perspective, statistically, no one will ever see this for another year. So it doesn't really matter too much of what I say. But, anyways, I'll just jump right into it. So, hello and welcome to The Rich Programmer. I'm your host, The Rich Programmer. As you can tell from me being pretty awkward, this is my first post ever on the internet. So my kind of videos, I guess, or podcasts or posts or whatever you want to call them, are just to teach regular programmers, software developers, and QA developers how to get from that 70 to 150K salary range to somewhere much sweeter, along the lines of anywhere between 200 and 400,000. Just from full disclosure, I don't claim to be a millionaire. I'm pretty confident I'll be there in a few years. Right now, I'm heading towards about 400,000 a year annualized as a programmer. I'm using a strategy I'll outline in another post, but so that'll probably be the next podcast post. But this post is really about just me and how I got started. So we all know it's really exciting to finally land a job where you get to code and do what you really enjoy, at least if you enjoy coding as much as I do. That first paycheck's really sweet, and it was especially sweet for me. When I was 20 years old, I actually dropped out of college because I was being offered a six-figure salary, and I thought I was set for life. But how did I get to this point? I'm going to outline that in a resume-style format, and I'll outline some skills I obtained that were required to progress towards that sweet, sweet 100K six-figure club. So the starting point, my experience with programming started 7 years before I landed that job. Don't let that discourage you though, because the majority of my experience was obtained in the past 3 years. That being said, I'm not going to admit anything. I'd rather be as transparent as possible. I started programming games on a game engine called Game Maker 8, and it was a magical time in my life. I love video games. Going to spare you the fairy tale though. Every engineer kind of remembers the first time they made something and how awful it was. But they remember it and reminisce on simpler times. So that was a good time. In the next few years, I occasionally worked on these games. Didn't really work on them to any level of obsession. I'd still play video games, went to school, that whole thing. But worked on these games. Eventually landed an internship in high school using the Unity engine, so just another game engine. Note that the language I learned from GameMaker was Java, had nothing to do with C Sharp, which was Unity, and programming fundamentals are the same no matter what language you're using. Pretty sure we all know this, so didn't really matter. I took AP Computer Science in high school, which was entry-level programming, loops, functions, that whole thing. Pretty easy stuff if you've already known most of that. So finally getting to college here. When college started, things started getting serious. Not from a class perspective. I didn't really go to class all that much, and I didn't like math and hated computer science class. In college, they had us learning C++ in an old terminal-based IDE from before I was born in like the 1990s. So there was crazy, crazy old technology at college. Kind of retaught a lot of the stuff in AP Computer Science that I already learned. And I didn't really learn anything new until I got into the 300 level classes in college, which were supposed to be the major classes. And that's kind of when I had enough and dropped out. I had some jobs interested in working with me just because of personal projects I had built. So during the span of 3 years is where the real value came in. And the real value for you comes in. This is really where the magic starts happening and where the value really starts being created. So I bought an iMac with the money I'd been saving working at In-N-Out the past year. I was in France on a small island in vacation, and I was there because I was dating my girlfriend at the time. We went to France for the first time, and we were there with her family. And I was just kind of on the island, kind of wondering what I'm really going to do with my life. And, college was coming up and so forth. And I just kind of thought to myself, it'd be really great to be an app developer and work on mobile apps. I had a few ambitious startup app ideas. And I went on to then buy this iMac and just teach myself programming. So anytime college was out, school was out, as an iMac, so obviously not a laptop. I would come home and get on these Udemy classes for Swift and Objective-C, and it was more Objective-C back then. But I wanted to be an app entrepreneur, kind of like the Snapchat guy or Mark Zuckerberg and these type of folks. Really just wanted to sell an app for millions and get super popular in the tech community and be kind of a rock star there. I thought it would just take one app and cash out on that. Definitely wanted the clout and the big paycheck. And this is the type of ambition that was kind of required to put yourself on the fast track. This is where things started getting serious. So I explained earlier, kind of with the game maker stuff, was going to school, playing video games, occasionally getting on Game Maker. With this, it was a lot different. I was just always on the Mac learning iPhone programming and iOS programming when I wasn't in school. I'd go to school for like whatever it was, 6-7 hours, and then come home and program when I wasn't doing homework. And I got a bit of Objective-C under my belt and started learning Swift. And I thought I needed Objective-C, but this was around the time when nobody was supporting it anymore, so I had to switch to Swift. And then I jumped into apps. So I could have saved myself 3 months right there if I had just learned Swift. So how did I learn language? No secret sauce, like I mentioned, Udemy and Swift, and just taking the fundamental courses, trying to take some sort of REST API knowledge, so using a backend like AWS or Firebase, and then that kind of gives you the experience you need for most jobs. So specifically, check out REST APIs. And then once I learned all this in the span of a month, and this is just the basics of just Xcode, getting an app working, calling APIs, so forth. Started making my own projects. And this is kind of the most important part. This is what gets you that first job and gets you past you need a job to get experience and you need experience to get a job catch-22 situation. Just making your own personal projects and selling them as if they were startup ventures, which they are. So you're not lying and you're not being deceitful. You're putting products out into the marketplace, and that's kind of why I recommend apps as kind of getting started with coding, whether they be web apps, Android apps, or iOS apps, doesn't matter. First app I made was a Frankenstein mess of code I learned in the courses, and I kind of pasted things together. So I learned how to use Firebase in one course, and then Core Data or the YouTube API or so forth in other apps, or other courses rather. So I eventually pulled together all these skills and made kind of a social network that let you see cool things going on around you. Totally sucked. Got all my friends to give it a 5-star review on the App Store though, and no one ended up using it, but it was a good kind of start. And then I built a few projects past that point. I built a pretty nice music streaming app, got that to a few thousand users. It was basically YouTube Red, but for free. And it allowed people to stream basically YouTube videos without ads. So pretty cool. Ended up getting demonetized, but that's another story. I joined a startup as a founder. I just learned Swift, and now I'm joining a startup company. What's this kind of hopping around? A few key things with this that you can leave out for job interviews. You don't need to be paid for the work you're doing. You're still doing work and getting experience. So again, not being deceitful. And the startup you work with doesn't need to make millions. So if you're kind of on your own, you don't really know anybody in the startup world, you can leverage startup incubators like Y Combinator and find a startup founder and create a co-founder, or find a co-founder that needs an app and has no money, and then work like hell on it. So work really hard with them, try to make the company as successful as you can, because you just might. Worst case scenario, you have tons of job experience that can then take that relationship into getting your first job. By this time, I had created a relationship with one of these founders and helped her build an on-demand yoga service that I stayed a part of for a year. So by now, my resume kind of looked like this. I'll leave the company names out. So app company, 2 years of experience. Nothing wrong with publishing your own apps. Just, and you don't need any crazy legal structure either. You can just use your own name. So app 1 and app 2, kind of just describing the different use cases. So social network, music streaming service. And then below that, I would have, startup company with an app on the App Store with articles written about the founder. And that's kind of the other person's job in a kind of starting out company. You have someone building the software, and then you have someone marketing it. So if they're not marketing it, they're not doing a very good job. So they got to have some content out there on that, give you some credibility. And then always in each of these descriptions, I'd give the technologies that I'm using. And then once that startup company failed, I was kind of devastated because I thought we were going to perform pretty well. We were going to make it. And my founder kind of left me hanging high to dry. And they actually moved to a different state. And I had this app that I made them, but kind of no money in my pocket. But I had the experience. And to get a job, you need experience, right? So we get past that catch-22. Then I started applying for jobs and ended up at a global organization that an app geared towards restaurants. And that's kind of where I dropped out of college to make that six-figure jump. And I haven't looked back since. It's been very productive for me. I've moved up, jumping around a couple different jobs, and I've moved up to a lead developer position now. And I'm working some other business as well. And that's kind of where I get to that 400 a year annualization of my income. It's not from a single job. It's from multiple contracts and positions. So we'll talk about that in another video, like I mentioned in the beginning. But that's how it shook out for me. It doesn't need to be like that for you. If you have targeted the job a lot sooner, I'm sure you could have gotten there faster. I kind of spent a year or so extra, I believe, in the startup world. I probably could have done this sooner had I just stay more committed to job interviews and this sort of thing. So yeah, that's a very scattered, context-driven explanation on how I did it. But 3 takeaways I guess you can have from this, and also you need to know how to sell yourself. So that's another video I'll probably do. You gotta learn a programming language that you can create a product or service with, and create your own product or service. You need to join a startup company for free and work for them. And then you need to translate that experience into a high-paying job. And a college degree is no match for real-life experience. Nobody gives a shit about your college degree. And yeah, I hope this helps. That's kind of my first podcast post. Love your guys' feedback if you like that. Probably no one's going to see it anyways, but if you're out there listening, thank you. And yeah, thanks. This is Rich Programmer. See ya.